Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to my vlog, where it's both my mission and my pleasure to highlight my creative journey in hopes of inspiring you, giving you specific takeaway, all that way your journey can be at least a little bit easier. Now, before I fully dive into things, I would like to take the opportunity to invite you to subscribe if you haven't already. That way you get all the various lessons and episodes that I put out right when I put them out. Thank you if you just did, and thank you if you already were. It truly does mean a lot to me, as I hope it does to you. So, let's get into this. The theme that I want to touch upon is living in the unknown of life. So, this is something that I'm truly experiencing in the last couple weeks, kind of confronting head on, right? Now, the truth of the matter is we're always living in the unknown. The idea that there's any amount of certainty we have in life is kind of one of the biggest lies we tell ourselves, right? Ultimately, we think something is predictable, but, at the same time, no, it's not. And we think that if we form everything into this nice presentation and control the various aspects around us, that life will be pleasant and so forth. It's not. And in fact, the magic, right, happens in those unknown places once we step fully into that. And again, you're always in that unknown, but you can either kind of choose to accept it and work with it and, go sort of with the flow, even if it doesn't always behoove you, or you can rail against that and be upset by it, right? I think those are essentially the options. And, for me, I try to now just embrace that unknown. And it's scary and messy a lot of times, but as I said, if you do that, that's where the magic happens. So, giving you kind of more concrete examples, right? It kind of goes to this idea of having faith. People think faith is kind of static by its very nature, and it's not. To me, stepping into the unknown with faith is about taking the necessary action steps and then letting go of the result, right? That's it. Now, what is the right action step? Well, that's where it can get complicated. People have different viewpoints on this, but for me, that's kind of the fun aspect, is really going with what is honest and what is kind. In the live action Cinderella, one of the repeated lines is "have courage and be kind," right? So I think, to me, anything along that spirit is the right option. There's a quote in the Huck Finn movie starring Elijah Wood, but at the end, the widow Douglas says, "Your little heart guided you quite well." And I think it's something like that. We oftentimes just get into this realm, again, because we try to force a certain result, that when it's not coming in that way, we get frustrated. But very much so for me, in this past week, I saw my mom, and it was very much the unknown. I asked her to send me an itinerary of what we're going to do, and she's like, "I don't have time for that. We'll just take it that, what will be." And, she had her own plan, but, she kind of like told it to me, but I didn't really know. I mean, to be honest, she didn't really know. So talk about just, okay, embrace the unknowns. The same can apply for, love, sticking with the theme of it coming up with Valentine's Day soon, or, certainly your creative projects. Now that my second movie is like officially complete, in the sense that I've done everything, including all the stuff a distributor needs, from the technical aspects, like all the nitty gritty boring stuff, I can look back on it and talk about stepping into the unknown. This idea that we're going to film an entire feature film in Colombia, while amidst the pandemic, and we're just going to make it work, right? And so, definitely didn't always turn out well for us in certain moments, but in the end, we just kept working and having that faith, right? Knowing that, like, hey, if we just do what is needed, then things will work out for us in some sort of capacity, right? And they did, But I also know that can be tiring, I think for artists, right, it's this notion of when will things hit for me? Because especially the ones that are like, really pounding the pavement, so to speak, and I have a lot of friends like this, we share that sentiment of like, it's just hard. And this year in particular, everyone has this fatigue, we've just been going strong for so long, and it's like, when will the sailing be smooth? And that's part of embracing the unknown, is that may never come. This may be it. And you have to kind of go with that. And that can be frustrating. I get that. My friend and I, Khalil, we were working on Grammys for like the Grammy night, and we also do stuff year round with them. But overall, on Grammy night, we were both working, and it was interesting. We had a moment of just a little bit of downtime, and we're just saying, like, it's interesting, the Grammys is a lot of work, but for us, this is like literally, job number 3 of the day type of thing, because we've always just got so many different things going on. And in that sense, not necessarily by choice always, sometimes it's a matter of, okay, in order to fund a project, you have to have the extra cash, or whatever else, right? We're trying to, build something, whether financially or otherwise, and that takes that amount of work, and it's unfortunate that it does in many ways. Modern living in that way can feel very stressful, of the fact that, especially like right now, just to keep afloat, it's like you got to have multiple things going on. But nonetheless, again, it's that idea of you can either complain about it or just accept it as it is and work with it. And it's not to say that I just accept things as they are fully. Now, as I continue to grow within the areas that I can, and I've been highlighting this since the start of the year, I don't mind speaking my mind about stuff, and I try to do it, as I said, in a kind and honest way to fix, to enhance, to elevate, whatever the situation calls for, those things, right, as I see them. And, to the extent that I can, right, rather than just complain about X, Y, and Z, it's like, where can I affect the positive change and do it? And, even in that arena, sometimes, I'll speak with various people and they'll say, no, I don't think that's smart, or whatever. And I get where they're coming from, right? It can be easy to misstep in all facets of life, right? But for me, I know, like, what they're seeing is essentially limited options, right? Like, there's the conventional way, and then, there's the unconventional way, which leads to bad results. And for me, my aim is to always see, okay, what is the third option that doesn't accept, this blindly, just as is? Like, how can we affect the change that most of us actually do want, but do it in a way that doesn't yield the bad results? And so in that sense, it's very much problem solving, which is a big skill of mine. But I look at it and I think, a lot of times we pigeonhole ourselves into thinking, that there's these limited options. And if nothing else, I try to think of the third option, right? In my case, I try to think of the fourth, fifth, sixth, and so on option. But like, what is that? What is the right option that no one else is seeing? And maybe I challenge myself to do it. Maybe it's just kind of a natural byproduct or whatever. But very much so, that's what I try to do. And it's actually funny because my friend Danielle Robay, who does the podcast Pretty Smart, and that I work on, she, as like a holiday gift, she sent me this book called The Third Door: The Wild Quest to Uncover How the World's Most Successful People Launch Their Careers. And this is by Alex Banayan, I think. Apologies if I mispronounced that name. But it's interesting, sometimes things find you at the right time, because very much so for me, this had been top of mind, and then to receive this book, like just recently, it reaffirms this idea that what I intuit is not so crazy. It might seem crazy to the masses overall, but to the people that get it, it's not so crazy, and it does work out, or can work out. If you embrace it, right? Like that's when we talk about like being in the unknown, it's about getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. And even when things don't go your way, as long as you handle yourself to the best of your ability, then you have no shame. And you can be proud of yourself. And I'm finding that more and more as I continue with things. Like, and it's tough to kind of like fully dissect, because it's a lot of things kind of converging all at once. The teachings of a Don Miguel Ruiz, a Stephen Pressfield, a Byron Katie, her process of the work of asking, is this true? Is this not true? Like, it all converges all at once in any given situation. Here's kind of an example. A couple weeks ago, I was with a group of friends, and they were like, this person, they're coming in with a bad mood of like whatever. And I was like, I don't know, I didn't get that reading, and they're like, no, this person's in a bad mood. So I was like, okay, well, maybe they're seeing something that I'm not seeing. So I asked the person, I was like, hey, is everything okay? Like, and they said yes. But it's just, and, in that sense, like, yes, they could have been very much lying to me. But I don't think they were, because I did it in a kind of more sort of, I did it in privacy, and I also kind of expanded upon it, particular to the situation, where I like highlighted certain specifics of like, hey, are these things that could be bothering you, because you seem stressed. And the person was like, no, it was just hectic, X, Y, and Z, but I'm here, and it's all good. I was like, okay, cool. And for me, again, I have to, I don't know whether or not that's true, but that's what they're telling me, that it's true. And so I have to just kind of accept that in a sense, So many people fixate and are affected by it that they then like, just hold that and not like let it affect their mood, but they like, keep bringing it up to other people. Like, oh, this person's, and it's like, then you're getting away from the enjoyment of the thing. And, ultimately, regardless of whether the person was upset or not, it's like, you know what? And they had a frustrating moment. And if anything, like, let's all just enjoy the activity that we're a part of. And that'll help, that's what can relieve them of that pain. But to just go wildly focused, zero in on this thing, I don't think it was going to be it. Not in that particular situation, at least for me. But again, it was just that kind of ability to, take the information, act upon it, but from this place, like, as I said, like the Huck Finn quote, your little heart guided you quite well. And I think a lot of times we do know answers. We just don't listen to ourselves. And a lot of times we actually seek advice from other people. We try to offload, hey, tell me what to do. And in reality, we don't need advice. We actually just need perspective. So I don't think it's wrong to go to people. But advice looks for an answer. You could also call it a shortcut. Whereas sometimes when the answer doesn't readily present itself to me it's an exploration, right? And that's what I look at it like. And when I talk with my friends, it makes their jobs easier because they don't have to be under the stress of providing me with, here's the answer. It's more of, okay, here's my thoughts on that. And if it fits, it fits. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. And vice versa, right? Same thing, when people call me, I'm just like, this is based on my own experience or whatever. This is my perspective. So I don't try to give advice. I try to give perspective. So that way they can come to an answer themselves. And most times they kind of know the answer themselves. They just need it reaffirmed in some particular way. But yeah, it's, how do you talk about the unknown in that way? And the funny part is with the latest film that I am working on, it very much is about seeking a third answer to a very big problem. It's a allegory or metaphor, for life, as all great stories are. Like Lord of the Rings is the story of good and evil, right? And all the layers therein. And mine tries to tackle, hefty stuff in that way. And that was for the longest time, I knew what I wanted to accomplish with the end of this movie, but doing so in a very specific and inevitable way was just eluding me. But, for months now, I've been kind of chipping away at it, revising, getting feedback from my peers, and finally, it just clicked of oh, okay, this is it. It's not, I can see the thing. Now, how I described it within the outline of its current iteration might not be exactly it, but it was very much, we're there. I see the light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. And it very much is reflective of this idea of the unknown of life. The question for me as I was working on it was, how do you essentially, because this person, I think in life we have this idea that we don't know, right? We try to do the best that we can, but we really don't know. And anyone who says that they know, they don't know, right? But how do you put that into a story? Because a character must take action, and it must mean something. The audience has to know what it means. So that became the challenge. And finally, it just really started to kind of click of, okay, because I knew it had to be a third option, an unseen option. And what is that? And now finally, through the whole process, it just, all of a sudden, it was like a rush, and it came into my mind. I was like, oh, this thing that they're actively, working towards, and some people are actively working against. Here's how that fits and meshes into a third option. Which in itself is representative of the idea of just keep taking steps forward, right? You're not always going to get it perfect, but if you keep taking, what are genuine steps of action, you'll get to a place where, it might not always work out, but it's okay, right? You can be proud of yourself in that way. Yeah, so that's kind of what it's been like. It's a very, as I say, it's both a magical and a messy place to occupy. Like, it can be really scary at times, right? Because you're putting yourself out there in vulnerability. But what you're really doing is you're fully living. Something I talk a lot about is this idea of ideas. A lot of people have ideas, and they think these ideas are great. Well, we don't know that, because an idea has to be expressed, right? If it's an idea for a movie, okay, it has to be written at the very least, right? If it's a product, it has to be, go through prototype and so forth. But in our minds, an idea is perfect. And so our fearful self doesn't want to let go of that idea. And we hide behind this notion that someone will steal the idea because it's so good. They're not going to steal the idea. Let them steal the idea. Because no one's going to execute it in the same way as you. It's only in the execution we start to, an idea of a story many times is riddled with cliche. When it comes to an idea about a product, we think that it can be made, and it's only like in creating it that we start to learn all the shortcomings of that actual idea. So we have to work through that. And it's only through the action that our talent exposes itself. I talked about this last time, but people give credence to art being the doing of things. And it's twofold now as I see it. The real art is the observation of the world, seeing something and wanting to express it. And then expressing it is an act of craftsmanship, right? Whether you're a painter, if you're a writer, then your words, right? So you're a wordsmith, stuff like that, right? And both are necessary. But I think sometimes, people both have to work in tandem across the whole facet, right? You're not just done just because you have an observation. And then to just create something without observation also doesn't work. So that's how I look at things, strange as it may be. Something kind of sort of related to all this, or maybe not, but I wanted to talk about it all the same, is, I was in a therapy session with, my therapist, obviously, and, I was joking with him about, I'm writing a nonfiction book about filmmaking, and in particular chronicling, the steps I took and how others can apply it with my first movie. And that was 4 years ago. But in many ways, even though it's a nonfiction book, I'm like, writing about that version of me is like getting into the mind of a fictional character, because it's so far gone from who I am today. that I have to literally put myself in that mindset of what I once was. And I know in that sense, I know the outcome, right? The movie got made. But in terms of making it compelling and drawing out those lessons, I have to put myself into that mindset of the unknown, because I didn't know how things would turn out when I first said about that movie. And even when I completed it, it was all still very new to me overall, right? I mean, we were in the pandemic, so the whole film festival circuit was totally different. And we all had to adapt. And by stepping into that and feeling what I felt then, I can bring my story to life and help pave the path for other filmmakers. That's the goal of the book. So yeah, that's kind of what, to me, has really been all about, just doing what you can to the best of your ability and adjusting accordingly however life comes at you, So, one last thing before I leave you, which I know this was kind of like a very heady episode, and in the coming weeks, or certainly next week, will be a lot more tangible, because I'll be back to, writing and developing various things, so I'll have more concrete stuff. But to make up for that, this week I am releasing some how-to videos, or at least behind-the-scenes looks of my second movie, and how I made certain choices and yada yada yada. So you can look forward to that. Also, I do want to mention my Patreon page, patreon.com/Phil Svitek. It's a way to not only support me. There's only one tier; it's $10 a month. But the benefit for you is that you get behind the scenes access, and more specifically, you get the opportunity to interact with me on a more one-on-one level, right? I think these free episodes are great because, of course, you can comment or hit me up on social media. But there, among one of the things, I do a monthly Q&A, a live session. It's basically a Zoom, and we chat and we go over your stuff and things like that. So check it out if that's of interest. But anyway, one thing I want to leave you on is, how you start your day is important, right? A lot of people talk about this, and for me, it's one of the reasons, I always joke that I don't like coffee. I prefer orange juice instead. I'd be like, really? I'm like, yeah, because OJ looks like sunshine in a cup versus coffee just looks dark and bitter and, unappealing. But what's also funny is one of my mom's friends, he starts his day by watching stand-up comedy, and he's always laughing. And she's, she was pointing out how that seems like a smart idea, you start your day on a bright note. And I was thinking about it. I was like, yeah, you know what? For me, when I eat breakfast, I watch sitcoms because they're short enough to get through in a quick amount of time. And yeah, it has that effect for me of watching them makes me feel good. So, something to it about just, it could be those specifics, but just in general of how to start your day off on the right foot, so to speak, right? And really considering what that might mean for you, I think is important. So I wanted to kind of end with that for you. Anyway, thank you for taking the time to tune in. I truly do appreciate you. As always, comment down below or hit me up on social media with any questions, thoughts, or topics you'd like to see covered in future episodes. I truly do appreciate you and hope to see you next time.